can't create a great customer experience without having a remarkable employee experience, because someone's got to deliver that experience you're delivering to your customers.
Tracking how many new job applications come from employee referrals is a great way for you to assess the overall internal health of your organization, says today's Ask an Expert. Hi, I'm Joshua Carlson, co-founder of Propeller Media, and today I sit down with Joey Coleman. He's well regarded as an international speaker as well as a customer experience guru. We've had Joey on the past to talk about the customer experience process and how you can improve it, but today we're all talking about how we look at a company internally. Joey has written a book called How to Never Lose an Employee Again, and today we're going to dive into that. So let's hear what Joey has to say. Joey, thank you so much for coming back on our Ask an Expert podcast.
Joshua, thank you so much for having me back. It's great to get a chance to be back on the show. And thanks to everybody who's listening in. I'm going to do my best to live up to the expert moniker. Not sure I'll be able to do it, but I will try my best.
Well, we'll let our listeners decide here soon enough.
Perfect.
Last conversation, we were talking a lot about the customer experience. And during that conversation, there were a few points about talking ways that we can improve it by actually focusing on the employee experience, which is really what we're here to talk about today at length. So kind of talk to me about how this formal shift from looking at the customer and now realizing like, gosh, if we're going to do all of that, we need to do something looking at our employees as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Joshua, because I've gotten a lot from people. Wait a minute, I thought you were the customer experience guy. Now you're the employee experience guy. Here's the thing. I've been doing customer experience for almost 20 years. And I was about 5 minutes into that career when I realized that you can't create a great customer experience without having a remarkable employee experience, because someone's got to deliver that experience you're delivering to your customers. The challenge, Joshua, is that so many organizations see customer experience and employee experience as two totally separate silos.
Right.
Customer experience is usually marketing, sales, maybe ops, customer service. Employee experience is HR. And with all due respect to my HR friends, God forbid we invite HR to a meeting. Everybody gets nervous, right? Everybody's like, somebody's in trouble. Someone's being fired. Do I need a lawyer with me? Whatever it may be. And so when I was working predominantly on the customer experience side, I was always having conversations about employee experience, but I was thinking them as two separate books, mainly because that's how most organizations think of them. Right. My hope is with this new book that folks will have a companion piece, a playbook. So if you focused on your customer experience before, here's a great way to make that even better by focusing on your employee experience. If you're coming to the conversation from the HR employee side, great, you'll be well stood after we go through and implement some of these ideas to deliver even better customer experiences.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I love about you is that you're really great on doing copious amounts of research where it's not just theoretical, like we're actually talking about legitimate practices in real world applications. And the one that I just wanted to start us off today is the Shackleton kind of expedition and how he approached that. And I'm not gonna spoil it, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and tell the story as you will. But a tremendously important experience to make sure we're getting the right people on a team. Talk about what he did, what they were trying to accomplish, and what the outcome was.
I love it. So if you're not familiar with the Shackleton story and the adventures of the Endurance, his ship, let me set the scene a little. It's 1914. Okay, so over 100 years ago, Antarctica really hasn't been explored. And every time somebody goes on an exploration there, a boatload of people die and they barely make it back, right? Yeah. This is the early days of thinking of Antarctica as the seventh continent and how we navigate it. Shackleton, who's been there before, says, I'm going to put together a crew. And it's going to be 27 people. At the time, all guys, because that's how they did these things. I'm not saying they should do it that way today, but at the time, that's what it was. 27 guys. We're going to get on this ship called the Endurance. We're going to sail down to Antarctica. We're going to hustle ourselves over to the South Pole. We're going to check it out. We're going to come back, get on the ship, and sail out. Great plan. Except that's not what happens. It is a great plan. It's a great plan. It's a brilliant plan. Not at all how it happens. Yeah. Couple of highlights. Endurance goes down there. They get down towards Antarctica. They're in the Antarctic Sea, just around Antarctica. The ice comes in and it locks the boat. Now, this happens regularly in Antarctic expeditions, but it locks it for about 10 months. That is not regular.
Yeah.
Then the ice starts to move and it starts to crack the boat apart. So the guys have to get off the boat and stay on the ice while they watch their ship sink. Then they've got to work their way across the land until they get to this island. They're trying to get their way back to a whaling station. Long story short, it takes 2 years before they get back to England.
Right.
Total craziness. But no one dies. And when they get back, everybody's in good spirits, despite the fact that they've been gone for 2 years and it's just been pandemonium. Why is that? Well, Shackleton had this unique way of interviewing candidates. And they would go through the interview process and then they'd come in for the final interview. And Shackleton would ask them one question. And we know this because of the journals that various sailors and scientists that were on the ship have shared. And the question he would ask is, do you sing? Not do you sail? Not do you like the taste of seal? No, it was do you sing? And they would get a perplexed look on their face. And Shackleton would pretty quickly follow up and say, guys, no, I don't mean any of that Caruso opera stuff. What I'm talking about is if you're hanging out with the boys around the fire, will you shout a song or two? Mm-hmm. What he was trying to figure out is what their attitude was. Yeah. Did they have a vision of optimism? Did they like camaraderie? Were they willing to be part of the team? Because Shackleton had learned on his previous 2 voyages that in the cold Antarctic night, with the katabatic winds blowing and plummeting the tent here and there, was it possible to keep morale high by singing a song or two around the fire? And he had learned that it was. When the ship was falling apart and sinking into the ice is breaking up the ship and it's sinking, he ordered his men to remove as much of the provisions as they could. Mm-hmm. And he was doing a final look at the inventory before the ship sank. And he said, guys, where's the banjo? And they're like, well, we left it on the ship. We brought the food. He says, no. Go get the banjo. I would rather leave food on the ship than leave the banjo, because he knew that's how they would have morale. So people listening in might say, well, Joey, we're not planning an Antarctic expedition. We don't plan to get stuck in the ice for 10 months and then spend another, 14 months working our way back to civilization. Why is this relevant? Well, I would posit it's relevant for 2 reasons. Number one, you should absolutely hire for attitude over aptitude. You can teach an employee to do anything. And the reason we know that to be true is because the employees you have that are currently doing those tasks had to learn how to do them. They weren't born knowing how to do this. Anyone can be taught the skill. They can be taught how to execute on the task. Right. It's really hard to teach someone to be a decent human being. It's really hard to teach someone to be the kind of person you want to have a beer with or sit around the campfire song and sing a song with. Yeah. So number one, we want to do that. Number two, what would it look like, even just as a thought exercise, to ask yourself, is there one question we could ask in the interview that would cut right to attitude? One question we could probe or story we could ask our candidates to tell that would give us insight as to what it's going to be like to work with them when the chips are down. I think it's a useful thought exercise, if nothing else.
So let's carry that thought. So do you sing? I think it's a great one. It has a very literal, and a very time-centered kind of relevancy to what they were doing going on this expedition. Is there a one question, or perhaps a method to help organizations define their one question as they're looking at their business?
Yeah, Joshua, there are a couple different approaches one might take. One approach is to look at the most challenging aspects of your business and then extrapolate out the type of person that we'd need to navigate that and define a question accordingly. So let me give you an example from my own life. I'm a recovering attorney. And when I was in law school, first step's admitting you have a problem. There's 11 steps after that. It gets easier. Okay. When I was in law school, I worked for the law journal at the school, right? It's a scholarly publication. Somehow I talked myself into the project. It was not based on grades. And what was unique about this business, about this enterprise, is they did a publication every quarter. And in the 2 to 3 days leading up to the publication, if you've ever been involved with a formal publication, whether that's a newspaper, a magazine, a scholarly journal, something like that, the days right before it goes to press are crazy.
Yeah.
They're insane. It's checking that T's are crossed and I's are dotted and commas are in the right place. And the authors that were submitting articles and got them late, you're trying to rush and fit them in and you're doing all the layout. It's just pandemonium. I went to the editor and I said, here's the deal. I know that 4 times a year, it's crazy. So what I would like to do is I would like you to know that I'm your go-to guy for crazy because I can actually survive on very little sleep. It's a weird trait I have, but
Lucky
if you
you.
need someone to, lucky me, but if you need to have someone in the office 24/7 for 2 days, 3 days, something like that. So really 24/2 or 24/3, not 24/7. I'm your go-to guy. Now, let's imagine I was interviewing for that job. The question I might ask is, when was the last time you pulled an all-nighter? Mm-hmm. Now, from knowing that answer, I would know, is this something you're okay with? Is this something you're comfortable with? Is this something you have familiarity with? Tell me about that experience. Who else was on that all-nighter with you? That's whose references I'd like to check. Sure. What was it like to work with Joey at 3 a.m. when the chips were down? I'm not saying that employers should design their businesses around all-nighters. Okay, I want to be very clear. That is not the key takeaway of this story.
As one who's done that, I'm appreciative, yes. Right?
Yes. My record, which there used to be a time in my life where I wore this like a badge of courage on my sleeve. Yeah. My record was 37 all-nighters in 1 year. Okay. 37.
As someone who did 2 in 1 year, I'm like, I'm cringing right now.
Yeah. By the way, 37 was stupid. Yeah. Let's just address that. Just absolutely stupid. But it was a skill that I had that frankly had been honed in law school and before. And so I could bring it to bear in other areas of my life. The question is, what are the unique, challenging scenarios that happen in your business? And how can you find through a series of questions what someone will be like navigating those environments in a way that aligns with what you're hoping for?
Okay. I love it. I think that that's a really interesting approach, kind of going to, what is this peak opportunity where we need everybody humming, and then try to basically deconstruct it, looking at that particular scenario. As I was looking at, the press kit that was sent out, one of the things I started thinking about, and specifically because we did talk last time, I feel philosophically we have a chicken or egg question, which is, right, as an entity, right, as a new business, I think you have a little bit more tolerance to figure out where we want to focus. But as an existing business that realizes, all right, Joey's onto something, we need to do something. Are we looking at the customers first, or are we looking at our employees first?
I think in this day and age, especially on the heels of COVID, the aspect of your business that is most threatened by the status quo is the employee experience, not the customer experience. Now, let's be clear. Pay attention to your customers too.
I know the answer is both.
Right? The answer is both. But if I got to pick one, I'm going to pick employees. And here's why. Let's talk about what's happened in the last few years because of COVID. Number one, almost every business on the planet has realized that, yes, employees don't need to be in the office to be productive.
Yeah.
Number two, employees globally have realized I don't need to be in the office to be productive. Number three, everyone has acknowledged that commutes are no fun. Number four, everyone has acknowledged that being able to throw in a load of laundry between Zoom calls is a nice lift for your personal life. Yeah. I think the landscape has changed as such that the employer now has had the curtain pulled back, and the employee realizes that some of the old forms of command and control and architecture just don't work anymore. Right. Additionally, in this move to more remote work and more comfortability with virtual employees and employees all over operating remotely, what we've also seen is that not only are employees more excited about this, but the smartest of employers are taking advantage of this. 30 years ago, if somebody were to say, Joey, where do you work? Or Joshua, where do you work? It is highly likely that our answer would have been, the company I work for is headquartered within 30 miles of my house.
Right.
Not always, but pretty likely.
Yeah, Pareto's rule.
Exactly. Now, if I say, who do you work for? And the answer is my company is headquartered within 30 miles of my house. It tells me one of a few things. Either you are in a very small business, i.e., less than 10 employees.
Mm-hmm.
B, you work in a business that requires a very hands-on element. You're a chiropractor, you're, a machinist, you're doing something that physically requires manipulation. Or number three, you're actually not hyper skilled. Because if you were hyper skilled, if you were the top talent, you would realize that you could play currency arbitrage with any employer in the world. Right. And we're seeing this, and we're seeing this at scale, not only with white collar jobs, but with blue collar jobs. We're seeing this across all industries. So I think what has happened, and the reason why my answer is the employee experience, is there are greater threats to the stability of your employee today than at any other time in modern history. Two quick statistics, and then hopefully I'll have made my case. Number one, the most recent research shows that 65% of current employees, 65%, are actively looking for a new job. 65%. Right. Now, my question to leaders all over is, which 65% of your business can you operate without? Because that's the landscape we're dealing with. Data point number two, which is all of, it's not even a week old at this point. Last week, Gallup released their newest employee engagement surveys. Okay. And what they found is that 77% of employees are either quiet quitting or loud quitting, but either way, they're quitting. They are disengaged at work. 77%. This is the highest percentage we have seen since these numbers started being recorded almost a quarter of a century ago.
Right.
And so the landscape has changed. This threat is bigger than ever before. You've got people in your organization in the majority, i.e., more than 50%, who are disengaged and are thinking about leaving. I don't think enough employers are paying attention to that.
So let's stay right there with that data, because I have a question as an employer-centric question, which is to say, yes, I do understand that 65% of my staff is contemplating making a change. What I'm experiencing is a perhaps higher percentage of uninteresting candidates when I am actually looking at. And it also makes me think, right? Because again, unless we're talking to a business that's starting today, I potentially have 65% of my staff that is not engaged for some portion of it. I know statistically some portion is just wrong seats, wrong people, wrong company,
totally.
Right? Totally. But organizationally, the thing that I keep coming back to as we've been talking today is, what is wrong with the HR departments? Right? Because honestly, as we look back at the past, like perhaps 5 years of a tremendous amount of corporate shift, right? From social impacts, it's Juneteenth today, right? This is a fairly new change. What's wrong with HR departments that they've fallen so behind where they should be today?
Oh, Joshua, that is a gigantic question that I'm happy to give a flyby addressing of a couple of things, and happy to dive deeper if anyone wants to connect offline. Couple thoughts. Number one, we did this to ourselves. Employers, i.e. C-suite, has been treating the HR department like a siloed, useless element of the business for decades. Let's stop and look at the phrase C-suite. Chief Executive Officer, Chief of Sales, Chief of Technology, HR Director. Like everybody else gets a C in their title except the people person. Right. Huge problem. Number two, most people that are operating within an HR functionality inside an organization report up to the COO. They don't report to the CEO. So there is a layer between the vision of the organization and what it's trying to accomplish and the people that are responsible for the people. Number three, we call it HR, which is an abbreviation for human resources. Humans are not resources. Humans are humans. It should be your people department. It should be, how are we focused on people getting engaged, as opposed to how can we twist one more ounce of productivity out of them. Finally, I think most HR departments have been incentivized on, when we tell you we need to hire someone, how quickly can you fill the seat? That's what most HR people's bonuses are based on. You need to be hiring and recruiting and looking all day, every day, not just when you need someone.
Yeah.
This is the nature of talent. Too many organizations wait until they have an available position before they even think about putting together a job description and starting to recruit. That is too late. I share some case studies. There's over 50 case studies in the book. And one of the case studies that's near and dear to my heart comes from the University of Notre Dame football team. Now, what's interesting about the football team, and yes, I'm talking sports, and if you're not a sports person, forgive the analogy, but man, there's so many things we can learn from this.
Yeah.
Their new head coach, Marcus Freeman, when asked about the job, he said, well, really, it's three things: recruiting, recruiting, and recruiting. And it was a beautiful answer. And he's given it multiple times since he's been hired about 2 years ago. It's kind of like the real estate agent saying it's about three things: location, location, location.
Yeah.
Your business needs to be constantly recruiting. You need to be constantly filling the pipeline. I don't mean necessarily hiring people, but I mean creating the space for potential candidates to learn more about you, to become intrigued by what you're doing, and to be jumping up and down in front of you saying, I'd like to be considered for whatever you're doing. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Joshua. I've been fortunate enough to have people come to me and say, hey, Joey, I don't know if you're hiring, but when you are, I'm interested.
Right.
Wow, awesome. That's what it's like to be an employer of choice. That's what you want. Last thing I'll say on this is I talk about 8 phases in the book, 8 phases of the employee journey. And the last phase is the advocate phase. Most employers want their people to be advocates, but they want them to be advocates 5 minutes after they accept the job offer, which is just foolish. It's not going to happen. It's like getting referrals from your customers before the product or service has been delivered. It's just not going to happen. What I often ask when evaluating your referrals or evaluating your recruiting is to say, when you have a new position open in your organization and you are going to interview a selection of candidates, whether that's 5 candidates, 20 candidates, 1,000 candidates, how many of the candidates that come through your process are referrals from your existing employees, i.e., your advocates?
Yep.
If that number is small, you don't actually have advocates. You have disengaged, quiet quitters. If it is high, if you're an employer of choice, if people love working for you, they're trying to get their cousin, their sister, their best friend, everybody they know, the coolest person they went to college with, the best person they ever worked with. They want those people to come work with them in your organization. It's a nice little data point that we can gauge to see just how much advocacy is actually occurring within an organization.
Yeah, I love that one because it's kind of a sneaky backdoor way to basically put the proof in the pudding and really see like, hey, are our employees really reaching out? Knowing you fighting Irish, and being a fan myself, so everybody else can. I mean, I think most people know I'm a big sports fan. So if you're listening, then you're probably on board. The biggest thing to me in college football that has happened in the past year is Deion Sanders. Is specifically around this kind of topic.
Yes.
Because if there's a guy that is all about recruiting, I mean, if there's a guy that players want to do nothing but transfer and jump from state to state, it's really seemingly to line up behind Deion. I grew up watching him as a player in both sports, so it was fascinating. A really incredible experience to have witnessed. From coaching standpoint, in his new role, what do you see him doing well? What do you see that he could perhaps do better at from kind of this manager experience?
I love this question, Joshua. Thanks so much. Yeah, he's an interesting case study, both as a human and a coach, right? So let's just look at coaching as it relates to his position at Colorado, at Boulder, and what he's done with the football team there. What I think is amazing is when he announced that he was coming, it was a newsworthy event. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who had built an incredible reputation as an athlete, who had been building a growing reputation as a coach, and specifically a growing reputation as a recruiter. So when he announced this, to much fanfare, there was an immediate shift of the lens to focus on what was happening in Colorado and particularly in Boulder. Now, with all due respect, I used to live in Boulder. The lens of college football had not been on Boulder in over a decade. Okay. It just hadn't.
Yeah.
But now that Dion's there, the lens is on. What I think is great is he built excitement, he built hype, and very early on, he was clear with the team. He said, look, there's a new standard here.
Yeah.
We are going to be playing at a different level. And some of you aren't going to be able to play at that level. I'm bringing in some people I already know who I know are going to play at that level. This is where I think there was maybe an opportunity for a little bit better messaging.
Okay.
All of the people who are already there, scholarship athletes, people who had made the decision to choose CU Boulder over other schools they might have had scholarships for, were now being held to a different standard. I don't have a problem with raising the standard, but I think you have to give people the chance to raise the standard before you make a decision. So if you're a new leader, you're coming into an organization, I have no problem with you saying, hey, we're going to up level here. We're going to take it to the next level. But you've got to be willing to support your people in that path to progress and that path to performance, as opposed to just saying, oh, looks like you don't have it. Peace out. See ya. Right. I know you committed here. I know you've put a lot of effort in here. I know you've been here for 1, 2, 3 years, but guess what? Nobody has time for you anymore. That I think is problematic. And I worry and wonder what it's going to be like to see the locker room culture going forward when you've got kind of a group of folks that have come in from the outside and have joined the team, and some of the folks that are quote unquote stayed behind from the previous team. The gelling that's going to happen, it'll be really interesting. And the testament to that will be on the field and in the locker room. And let's be clear, it's both. That's something I think leaders could also pay attention to. It's not just your performance in the marketplace. It's your performance in the break room. What's it like to actually interact with your coworkers, with your peers, as opposed to, are we moving the dial in terms of our bigger marketplace goals?
Yeah. Is your team singing together in the break room, right? To take it back to Shackleton.
100%. Exactly.
So let's stick in this a little bit further and talk about just this dichotomy of like, so he's a polarizing figure. He's fast acting, right? So that is definitely, pro or con. He's coming and he's making changes quickly. And I definitely hear the perhaps missed opportunity. But what do you do for the organization that, like, what is the time frame? Right? College, this is a very interesting one. Like, I don't know enough. I think you probably know far more about college sports than I do, college football. But like, is it to say like summer practice we're going to give you, right? Because like once the season starts, we've got a finite amount of games in order to show that marketplace performance. So what's a well-structured kind of transition plan that employees or employers could look towards to make that migration smooth for both sides?
Yeah, I love it. Years ago, I had the opportunity to be in the room when Tony Robbins was speaking, and he had an amazing quote that, boy, it's as if he chiseled it in stone into my brain, right? People often overestimate what decade. I think the challenge with so many leaders, especially in the United States, is they come in and they're like, we're going to move the dial next quarter. We're going to blow the numbers out in the next 4 months, 6 months. Everything is based on these very compressed timeframes.
Right.
There are any number of things I can do to have a huge impact in a short amount of time, but most of those have tremendous negative long-term consequences. Tony Robbins, to come back to it, when he was sharing this, said, what if I said to you, you need to come in tomorrow morning having lost 20 pounds. And if you've done that, we'll weigh you on the scale tonight when you leave. Tomorrow morning, if you've lost 20 pounds or more, we will give you $10 million. Now, the average person looked around and thought, that's impossible, Tony. That's crazy. No one would ever be able to do that. And as you felt the murmur and the angst in the room about this impossible task, Tony said, well, what if you amputated your legs?
Mm-hmm.
You'd lose 20 pounds. Yeah. Now, there'd be a big consequence, but you'd be millions richer.
Yeah.
I think many leaders come in and are swinging a chainsaw of amputation around without thinking about the long-term consequence.
Okay.
I wish more businesses thought like Japanese companies. Japanese companies have 500-year business plans.
Right.
In the United States, if you have a business plan that is projecting where you're going to be in 3 years, you're considered radical,
Right.
right? Most are like, what are you going to do by next month? So I think there's an opportunity for us to think a little more holistically. Last thing I'll say as it relates to college athletes, one thing I think businesses could learn from college coaches. When a college coach is recruiting a high school player to come play in college, at best, that player is going to be there 5 or 6 years.
Right.
At worst, which by the way means the player's amazing, they're going to be gone in 2 or 3. So in some ways, your best case scenario is your worst impact on retention. Because if you have players that are leaving early to go to professional sports, your reputation grows. But I don't see a lot of coaches getting angry that players are leaving early to go to the NFL or to go to Major League Baseball or to go to the NBA.
Right.
Because they recognize when those players leave, they now have a proof point to those recruits coming in of, hey, this was always a pit stop on your ultimate goal.
Right.
We will be able to propel you towards that faster. I think it would behoove many organizations to stop thinking of themselves as the final place their employees will work and just consider what would it be like to be the best place our employees ever worked, even if they only worked here for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. How would that change our standing in the marketplace if our employees, our network of people out there were saying, man, I like my job here, but the best place I ever worked, the place I felt most supported, the place where I grew the most as a human, that was at this place I worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago. If you're new, if you're fresh, if you've got talent, if you're trying to acquire new skills, you really should go work there because they take great care of you. In fact, I still go back for alumni events. I'm still involved in the alumni network, just like pro athletes are. This is how you build a sustainable long-term enterprise.
Well, as a Portland Trailblazer fan, I'm switching sports a little bit here. That's a small market team. We have an issue of drawing talent. Portland is not known as a talent that's quote unquote player friendly, and really all that just means is different opinions and lifestyle kind of thing. But like, we're just in the upper Northwest. And so we always talk about the thing that is interesting is veteran players who have had an opportunity to experience a lot in the league. When they come through Portland later in their career, they tout Portland as having a great culture and a great thing and a great town. And it's something that they do want to come back. So we may not get them at their peak, but there is this need, and that is a byproduct of what our market conditions look like here in Portland. And so to be able to play the strings that you can is strategically as possible is definitely a must.
Absolutely. And there's still a globally known brand that is very successful, makes the owners plenty of money, pays the players plenty of money, has a great fan base, even though they might not be playing for the championship every year.
Right.
That's okay. I think we have one of the perils of being connected to everyone in the world, especially via social media and the internet, is we're constantly comparing ourselves to the top of the pyramid. The number of entrepreneurs I talk to are like, I just want to be like Elon Musk. Actually, you don't. I promise you, you don't.
Yeah.
And that's not because I'm speaking ill of Elon Musk, but the sacrifices he has had to make, the way the stars have had to align. You don't need to be a multi-billionaire to have a good life. Right. You could be a multi-millionaire and have a good life. You could be someone who never makes more than $50,000 a year and have an amazing life. It's, have you decided the criteria by which you evaluate success? And I think more employers and employees need to give some thought and time to that consideration and answering that question, and then using that as a guide going forward when evaluating your career and life choices.
That's interesting. And I'm glad you brought this up because I was just talking to two different businesses. We were in the same room. They're different businesses by name, but they're in the similar space. And once we started going down this path of asking like, hey, how do you define success? It was interesting. They were divergent paths. And so one was focusing, these are service-based businesses, and one was more focused on, new installation, and one was focused more on maintenance. And so their KPIs were completely different, even though by title, they share the same space. So I think that's an important distinction. I want to shift. We hadn't started this last time, so we got a quickfire round. So right. Quick peppers in here. Yep. So carte blanche, just whatever's on top of your mind. Favorite podcast you're listening to right now?
Oh my goodness. Favorite podcast I'm listening to right now. I've been a long time loyalist to this one. It's called Three Books. It's
Okay.
by my friend Neil Pasricha. Neil interviews interesting people and asks them, what are the three most formative books of your life?
Yeah.
And the answers he gets compared to not only why it was formative, but where they were when they read it.
Yeah.
The only peril of this, I promise you, is you will keep an Amazon shopping cart open while you're on this thing and you'll be buying boatloads of books. So it's a great way to increase your personal library. But if
Yeah.
you're not into buying any more books, be careful on that one because there's always beautiful gems every episode.
Okay. Well, I'm actually in need. So I just got to literally doing the same thing. So this is actually the reason why I asked this. So I appreciate it. Do you have a current professional inspiration? Either it could be somebody like Shackleton, or it could just be somebody today that inspires you personally.
You know, this is going to sound like a cop out, Joshua, but I try to find inspiration in every human I meet.
Okay.
You know, every single human I meet is doing something that is worth modeling.
Right.
I don't care who they are. And so what I try to do is get curious about what it is they're doing that I find interesting, attractive, useful, valuable. Maybe it's even something they're doing that I find repulsing or repelling, right. But getting curious allows me to find something in everyone I interact with.
Okay, that's a great one. Since we actually talked about this, I feel like books and podcasts are fairly synonymous. So I like to throw out there from the first podcast you were talking about, the three books. Is there a book you're reading right now that you find particularly interesting?
You know, instead of giving you one I'm reading right now, how about I give you two that I recently finished, right? Which Perfect. I think might be useful. Number one of the best books that I have read about customer experience is a new book new in that it came out last year, called Unreasonable Hospitality. It was written by William Guidara, who is the creator of the #1 restaurant in the world. Stop and think how many times we go to a restaurant once and never go there again.
Yeah.
This guy built the ultimate restaurant. And the book is a masterclass in creating customer experiences and employee experiences because you can't have one without the other. So brilliant, brilliant example of how you balance the two. The other one, I'll go with a bit of a curveball. It was one that was unexpected. It was sent to me by a guy I met at an event. And the book is called Please, let me make sure I get the title right. Yeah. Please, Sorry, Thank You. The three most important phrases you will ever say. Okay. Now, I will tell you, this book was written by a pastor of a church in Washington, D.C. It's not a book that I necessarily would have picked up on my own. And for those of you that maybe have a complex relationship with organized religion or Christianity in particular, I will tell you that at least for me as a reader, I did not at all feel that it was heavy-handed. Certainly there was an element to that, but it was not, hey, and by the way, at the end, you need to believe what I believe.
Right.
Rather, it was, how does life get better by saying please more, by saying sorry more, and by saying thank you more? And I found the boiling down to those three things to, how shall I put it, remind me that those are words that should be part of my lexicon on a much more frequent basis, and that you can't really say those three words enough.
Yeah, so I think that they're simple words, but there's power behind how they are said. And it 100%. Is interesting how much we hear it today. And I just, as a little thought exercise, love throwing those words out to just see different people's reactions that they're so used to hearing. Like everybody just has these automated, and it's really about like, no, slowing down and actually making sure that you not just hear this, but that you truly feel that I have meaning behind these words. So that's a great one. Thank you for sharing. So this one will be interesting. Early riser or burning the midnight oil?
Oh, midnight oil from day one. Yes, my mom, she threw in the towel very early on a set bedtime. The rule became, as long as you're in your bed, if you want to read late into the night, so be it.
Okay.
First hour of the day is best served for me to just get the gears up and running and not have to interact with humans. After that, I'm happy to be an extrovert all day long.
I had a feeling when we were talking about the publication earlier, I knew the answer, but I had to ask you no less. Last one in the quickfire round is, what's your favorite pizza?
Oh, my favorite pizza. Ooh, In terms of toppings or brand or location or what any clarifier on there?
I want a specific type of pizza. If it happens to be one from a specific restaurant that you really enjoy, by all means, like whatever their special is. But if you just, your bread and butter is X, Y, and Z, like what's your go-to?
Gotcha. I'm when it comes to pizza, I'm pretty happy to be a pseudo basic guy.
Okay.
Love myself some buffalo mozzarella on the
Okay.
pizza as the topping. I skew tomato sauce more than anything else.
Yeah.
Equally happy thin crust or thick crust.
Okay.
Chicago style is delicious. I'm going to skew mostly towards a sweet as opposed to spicy sausage or hamburger,
Okay.
and a little bit of onion for flavor. Keep it pretty simple, keep it pretty straight. We want to get 2 or 3 cheeses in there. That's sometimes fun too, but
Okay.
that's what I'd say is the usual pizza order.
Okay. Well, it sounds fantastic to me. So I think you've got a good one there. Okay. So you've got this quote in that is around the importance of understanding employees' 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. life just as much as you understand their 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I thought that's fascinating for 2 reasons. One, intuitively, instantly, I'm like, duh. The more I know about somebody, the more I can position myself. And obviously being in marketing, I'm thinking about unique experience from every person I talk to, right? And trying to get something. But so I think that is intuitive, but there's also like, okay, now I'm hearing somebody that, has told me stay out of their personal life, right? Like that's their personal business. So
Right.
dig into this. And I know there's a happy medium in there. So kind of help educate the audience as far as what's the best approach for this, this delve into the personal world.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is I knew that this was going to be one of the most polarizing positions I took in the entire book. Okay. So I welcome this question. I lean into it. And if this question is even making you as a listener or a viewer uncomfortable, you're in the right spot. Let's lean into it. This is good. So here's the thing. I think part of the problem we are in today with disengaged employees, with employers struggling to find top talent, with this kind of confluence of negative energy between the boss and the worker, is built on the faulty premise that we've been told for decades of it's not personal, it's business, or this is work, this isn't your life. This is where I spend the bulk of my waking hours.
Right.
What do you mean this isn't my life?
Right.
These are hours that slip by and I can never get back. These are the things that I'm doing that establish a monetary worth for my contribution that allows me to have the money I need to raise my family, to live in the house I want to live, drive the car. They're not, it's not a binary conversation of it's work or personal. They are work and personal. They are connected. They are connected in a variety of ways. I think the reason this gets creepy is people aren't good at asking questions in the workplace about what's going on in someone's personal life.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's weird. We're not used to them. So what'd you do this weekend? That just like, I'm not interested in that conversation. So I think what needs to happen is leaders need to go first. Leaders need to volunteer that they have lives outside of the workplace and that those lives matter. Now, the real challenge here, Joshua, is for a lot of leaders, they're not doing the things that would indicate that their lives outside of work matter. They're doing things that would indicate that all that matters in their life is work.
They're doing 37 overnighters.
100%, for example. So what I think there's an opportunity for everyone to lean into is getting curious about the things that make the people in your organization light up.
Right.
I know very few people that light up around a Gantt chart or light it up around 300 unread emails or light up around an RFP. Some people do. And for those people, I applaud you. You're amazing. And you're unicorns. You're exceptions to the rule.
Right.
Most people light up about their significant other, their kids, the vacation they have planned, the favorite movie series they have that has a newest in the series dropping, this summer. Their favorite author has a new book coming out. Their favorite musician is on tour and they're getting ready to go there. Their connection with their sibling, their connection with their parents, their connection with their pet. Oh my goodness. Get most people going about if they have a pet, I don't care what the pet is. Most people will talk all day, every day about their pet. Connect with them about those things. And what you'll find is that there are more similarities than you might have otherwise thought. I believe when it comes to creating personal and emotional connection, we should be looking for points of similarity and points of polarity. What do I mean by that? Similarity. You have a dog. I have a dog. Let's talk dogs. or polarity rather.
Okay.
I root for Notre Dame. You root for CU Boulder.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of polarity, not full on polarity. If it was
Yep.
USC and Notre Dame or Michigan and Notre Dame or something like that, yeah, we've got a lot stronger polarity. But here's the thing, we can root for opposite teams, but still be friends.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say to this point, and I realize that I'm walking into a very dangerous zone. I think our society has become so fearful of conflicting perspectives, i.e., you vote blue, I vote red, or you believe this, or I believe that, that we have strayed away from talking about the things that matter to people, to talking about the things that make up your compass for life, your blueprint for life. And I think that's fundamentally bad for humanity, not just Americans and our society here. For humanity, we should be curious. There's an opportunity to ask questions and learn, as opposed to just do the heavy talking about what we believe.
So we're in a very peculiar time right now in corporate world. And I was talking with my wife yesterday, specifically about comedians and, certain, nobody in particular, but just, there have been cancellations as they're called. And what I've heard from several comedians is that comedy in large part through society has been this line definer. It has helped society at large determine what is and isn't funny. My brother has Parkinson's. I just watched Michael J. Fox's Still documentary, which was incredibly powerful and incredibly moving. And in a part, there's a scene where they make fun of Parkinson's. And it struck me in the moment of what we are going through right now in corporate, versus political opinions and things, where I understood that at that moment, that probably, now mind you, this is a sitcom 20 years ago, 30 years, that was probably kind of on the edge, but they did it and it played off. And obviously Michael J. Fox is a very charismatic person, but where do corporations, are corporations also line setters? Should we expect some corporations to cross the line? And I don't really even know my question, to be honest with you. It's just this observation of that line is moving right now. And as we look through history, it is always move. We as consumers should expect that it's going to continue to move. But I feel like the expectations sometimes are just a bit grandiose of where we are. I don't know. It's a very so I'll let you comment. That's what we'll wrap today. So
yeah, thanks Joshua for throwing a grenade into the conversation.
Yeah, let me here's a landmine, Joey.
Yeah, exactly. Here, Joey, navigate your way out of this one, and let's see if people actually like this. So here's my thought. Let's get historical to avoid getting hysterical.
Okay.
Who are the first comedians? Court jesters.
Yes.
Court jesters were the first comedians. And what did comedians do? The court jester did. Well, the court jester was famous for being able to stand in front of the king or the queen or the emperor and tell them that they had no clothes.
Right.
To make fun of them. Now, as a general rule, the court jester was the only person that could do this.
Yeah, right.
The court jester was the only, and frankly, most of our comedians draw a very clear line historically to the court jester. They are there to hold the mirror up to let us see ourselves.
Right.
Now, here's the punchline. There's a lot of people that don't want to look in a mirror.
Yeah.
But here's the other punchline. You turned on the comedy special. So if you're upset with what a comedian is saying, I would ask you, why were you watching?
Yeah.
If you're upset with the position that someone is taking, I would ask you, why are you reading opinions from Hollywood celebrities or reading opinions from your local governor or whoever it may be? These are just opinions. Mm-hmm. People have the right to their opinion. And while I may agree or disagree with the opinion, what I want to do is, how did you come to this belief? How did you come to this position? And are you stating this position for yourself? Or are you stating this position as doctrine for society? Most comedians, in my experience, are not saying, hey, this joke is how you should think about things.
Correct.
Instead, they're saying, hey, this joke is how I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
But I reserve the right to think differently about it in the show tomorrow night. I think we could use a lot more of that. I think we could
Yeah.
use a lot more of, hey, I'm trying this on for size. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to fit, but here's my current thinking and belief system, and let's see how it goes. Where I think corporations need to, how shall I put this? Reconsider their thought process
Okay.
is most corporations have no problem telling consumers how to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
You should see yourself as being lacking and less than if you don't have our product.
Right.
If you had our product, your life would be rainbows and sunshine. Well, if that's the case, they also have to be comfortable with someone saying, hey, I don't like the fact that you have children sewing your tennis shoes together.
Right.
And you're charging me $300 a pair, and you're paying the kid who's sewing the shoes together 12 cents per pair.
Right.
I think that's okay for the marketplace to push back on some of those things. And here's the thing, and we've done this to ourselves, especially here in the United States.
Yeah.
We've set up a system that our politicians in many ways are damned if they do and damned if they don't. They're going to irritate at least half the country with any decision they make, and the other half probably wasn't paying attention. Okay?
Fair.
So what might we need? We might need some corporations to take the lead on this. You know, one of the things I find very fascinating as an observer of humanity and society is the position that Apple is taking as it relates to privacy. Yes. Apple's basically saying, hey, we're a technology company. You're not thinking enough about your privacy, people. So we're going to think about it. And we're telling you, if it's on our platform, no sharing, none of that funny business. We're locking it down. It's your info. It's your toy. Now, there's a whole flock of people that are going, yes, I want more of that. There's a whole set of people that are going, gosh, I never thought of it that way, but I might think about it a little bit differently. And then there's a pocket of people that are like, no, take all of my personal information, do whatever you want with it. It's okay to take polarizing positions. Just know why you're taking them and be comfortable with the consequences. I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses today to lead.
Yeah.
I think a lot of businesses claim to be the marketplace leader. Well, folks, sometimes being a leader is having the hard conversations.
Yeah.
Sometimes being the leader is saying, look, what we're doing is wrong. We're not going to do this anymore. This was ridiculous. It's bad that we ever did it. Let's be better. I want to live in a world where everyone is trying to have next year be their best year. Right. Whether it's an individual, a corporation, a child, an adult, I don't care. Aren't we all as humans hoping to have it be better? Yeah. Now, to your point earlier, we get to define what better means. We get to explore what better means. But I find that usually if better means I'm kinder, I'm more generous, and I'm more empathetic, we can all kind of get behind those three principles. So maybe we start there and extrapolate from beyond.
Well, that's great. And I think it's fitting. I just will just piggyback that our topic today at large, I feel like we had already started last year when we talked originally about the customer. And as I re-listened to that, so much of what you were saying in that moment was around the actual employee experience. And I do, that's why the chicken and egg, while philosophical in nature, I do think it does start with the employees. And the more that we invest with that, that's long money with long return, as opposed to short money, quick decisions, quick return. I think the more that we can get closer to that 500-year Japanese company by looking at our employee base, the easier it's going to be on the revenue side. So thank you so much for coming back on today, Joey.
Oh, Josh, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks to everybody who was listening and watching. So appreciate you being part of the conversation and kind of tuning in while we talked. And hopefully, if nothing else, maybe I didn't prove myself an expert, but maybe I gave you one or two things to think a little differently about. And hopefully that's useful to you in creating customer experiences, employee experiences, or frankly, just life experiences.
So real quick, while we got you, where can they get the book?
So the book is available anywhere that you might like to get books. There's a hardcover edition. So if you want to take notes in the margins and see the pictures, you're good to go. There's an ebook edition. So if you like to highlight in your Kindle or Nook, you're all set. If you've enjoyed the sound of my voice, I read the audiobook version to you so you can have me narrate it. You can even jack me up to 3x speed and I'll talk really fast while I'm reading the book. Whatever works for you, it's going to be fine. But yeah, give the book a check. It's called Never Lose an Employee Again, A Simple Path to Remarkable Retention. Over 50 case studies from all 7 continents, really designed to be a playbook to help you actually make the changes that create better experiences for your employees and for you as an employer.
I love it. We need more people like you helping organizations move in the right direction. So thank you again, Joey. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Joshua.
Wow, another great episode from Joey. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Joey digs deep, and if you guys pick up a copy of his book, How to Never Lose an Employee Again, you're going to find real-world business applications about how businesses are successfully improving that culture from the inside, which obviously has a direct correlation to how you are presenting your business to your customers externally. So I hope you guys enjoyed it today. Please like, rate, and subscribe. That way you're automatically notified when we drop our next episode. So until then, keep propelling your business forward. Have a great day, guys.